with such amazing speakers, and just the energy in the room was spectacular. But, you know, we had the State of the Union last night, and I felt that it was really important that we would do a special edition, just get post-reaction on the State of the Union. And so I wanted to invite to join me KT McFarland, our ACU board member, a friend of CPAC, and someone who we spent a lot of time together with you and Alan this weekend. KT, thanks for joining us. Or me, I should say.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to spend yet another week with the Schlapp family.
I know. Well, first of all, I want to get your initial reaction on CPAC Florida. You know, I thought it was a talk about just these grassroots activists who really felt a sense of purpose and knew that they needed to come, get re-energized, and go back to their communities to make a difference. What do you think?
I think it was the most significant CPAC, I don't know, in decades, because you're right, it's the grassroots is organizing, the grassroots is motivated, because the grassroots realizes Washington ain't gonna fix this.
That's right.
You know, Washington is, as Ronald Reagan used to say, the scariest 5 words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.
Right.
The government isn't going to fix this. And so it's the grassroots organizers and the grassroots activists who are going to have to do whatever needs to be done now to really replace the big bloated bureaucratic state, which of the so-called experts, which they get everything wrong. You know, the so-called experts have gotten foreign policy wrong for the last 20 years. They got economic policy wrong. And so it's really up to the people of the United States to do what they do best. Go to the polls, replace a very bad and flawed government with a very new government with new ideas.
So what I thought was interesting, and I'm sure it happened to you too, KT, I met all these moms and, teachers and students. Some of them were all like, I'm going to run for office. I'm running for my local school board. It was simply remarkable to watch the number of people who I think were thinking about running for office, and they were trying to get the best advice they could to be successful, even in some of the most Democrat districts.
Yeah, you know what's really kind of neat? To me, it's a sort of a rebathing in the whole essence of democracy.
Right.
You know,
right.
that's what America's all about, right? We were founded as a grassroots movement, a grassroots rebellion against the establishment of the time, which was the King of England. And every generation or so, we renew that. And no other country is built on this notion of grassroots or the rights of the individual. It's always, in the history of the world, governments have always been dictators or kings or religious leaders or generals, or in the last 20 years, I think, the so-called meritocratic class, the so-called experts.
Right.
But they've all gotten it wrong. And so the great beauty of America is our founding fathers expected us to not only have the right, but the responsibility. And what we saw at CPAC, where you're right, there were moms coming up to me and saying, oh, I'm not, I feel like I've known you for years. Well, and I said, well, who are you? Oh, I'm a Loudoun County mom. I'm one of the ones who organized those
That's
people
right.
who were against the critical race theory being taught in our schools. And so I look at that, I said, look, you're my hero. I'm not your hero. What you're doing is what our founding fathers expected us to do, which is to take government back into the hands of the people when the government screws it up.
Well, I got to tell you, I know President Biden had his State of the Union address last night. I really felt President Trump gave his own version of the State of the Union at CPAC. Let's listen to a clip from that night when President Trump was speaking to all of our supporters. Take a listen.
During my term, oil was at $36 a barrel. Think of it, 36. Now it hit 100, and they think it's going to 150. So the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, a lot of countries, but Russia right now in particular is making more money than they ever dreamt possible. The cost of the war is very, very small compared to the kind of money they're taking in. There's never been a situation like that. It's horrible to watch. It's horrible because it's a disincentive for him to disengage.
So, KT, let me get your reaction. I think one of President Trump's biggest successes was ensuring that America became energy independent once again. Obviously, we're seeing a very different story under the Biden administration.
You know, I like the way you framed this, Mercy, where you said it was almost like there were two back-to-back State of the Union addresses, one from President Trump, one from President Biden. And one of the main themes of President Trump's State of the Union address at CPAC was he talked about energy independence. And he talked about his administration took the handcuffs off the oil and natural gas industry and allowed us, first of all, to be energy independent, which was terrific for our economy, terrific for our supplying our manufacturing needs. But he also talked about how important it was for international affairs. And by making America energy independent, we were energy exporters. We were exporting energy to Europe. We were also keeping the price of oil and natural gas low. And when President Trump talked, he talked about, when energy prices are high, you're giving Vladimir Putin and Iran the bankroll that they need to become aggressive nations.
Right.
And when the United States gets out of the energy business, not only are we importing energy from Russia, but Europe is dependent upon Russian energy. Now, Russian energy always comes with strings attached, and that's exactly what's happened. Russia is rich because of high energy prices, thanks to the Biden administration, who undid everything President Trump did. And so energy prices are high. Vladimir Putin has the bank account to go to war. And number two, because Europe is so dependent upon Russian energy, the Europeans, at least until maybe 2 days ago, the Europeans have been extremely reluctant to do anything to challenge Russia. Now that changed while we were at CPAC, as we were leaving CPAC on Sunday,
right.
The German government came out, as President Trump had urged them to do during his administration, and the German government came out and said, we're concerned that we're too dependent upon Russian oil and natural gas, and oh, by the way, we're going to increase our defense spending to 2%. So that was the stuff that Trump had talked about throughout his administration, especially with the Germans. President Biden comes out on the stage, and he had a golden opportunity to say, our German friends have now completely reversed course on energy independence and energy dependence on Russia. I think the time is here for America to rise above our petty concerns and to also encourage American energy independence once again. I mean, he had every reason and ability to do it. The Germans have already done it, but President Biden just blew it.
Yeah.
He mumbled on about Ukraine, but the main issue has always been about energy. And he just absolutely went full hardcore, crazy, loony, greedy left.
No kidding. I do want to also play this clip. I thought it was a very important moment in President Trump's speech when he talks about the fact that it was really under his presidency that we did not see Russian aggression. Let's take a listen.
Under Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under Biden, Russia invaded Ukraine. I stand as the only president of the 21st century on whose watch Russia did not invade another country.
I mean, KT, the president is right.
Not only is he right about that was the only time that his administration was the only time Putin didn't attack other countries, but he also, and amazingly, Donald Trump didn't claim credit for this. His was the only presidency in the last probably 5 or 6 that we weren't at war.
Right.
And Donald Trump did not take America to war. He ended the forever wars, and yet I think the tragedy is that he doesn't get the credit for it. And because President Biden has come in and just sort of reflexively, if Donald Trump was for it, I'm against it. President Biden has gotten us into a lot of problems.
So what I want to do is we're going to now go into President Biden's State of the Union, but we'll be right back after this.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Schlapp with CPAC, and it's my privilege to tell you that we've got a very important project that we've just announced, the First Amendment Fund. It's a brand new fund that we've created through our criminal justice reform efforts to raise money to take care of you, Americans who are being canceled and desecrated out there around the country. We know it just happened in Virginia, where parents were called domestic terrorists by the Biden administration, where people who just want to express their political views are canceled left and right. Now we have this terrible specter of a vaccine mandate where you can lose your job or be prevented from going to a restaurant or go to school according to your vaccination status. These are all the things that are happening in this country that are making people realize that America is in a fight to defend the principles that have made her great. If you want to be involved in this important effort, please go to conservative.org. click the link for the First Amendment Fund. Please donate to this C3 to help these victims across the country, including those who are just involved in politics, to make sure they have the legal representation they need to be able to live their great American life.
Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom.
That was President Biden last night at the State of the Union. And I've got to tell you, KT, I mean, you definitely don't want to get that wrong, calling Ukrainians Uranians.
Well, look, I'll forgive him the slip of the tongue. I think for me, the more important thing is the policies.
That's right.
Look, he's tired. We all know he's having cognitive decline. I'm not as upset about that. But what I am really concerned with is he said, oh, we're going to have a reset. You know, he knows that the American people are really very much against his policies and his presidency, but there was no reset there. He's just doubling down on far left agenda. He makes it sound good. He puts it, fluffs it up with a few nice words, but he hasn't changed course at all. He's doubled down.
So I got to ask you this because I'm really trying to figure out, it feels to me that President Biden and even our NATO allies, they've taken more of a step back and waited too long to put pressure on Russia. Is that your sense?
Yes, but, finally, at the end of the day, the 11th hour, they've started to do it. Not led by the United States, by the way, but led by Germany.
Right.
I think a couple of unexpected things happened while we were starting CPAC. First of all, Vladimir Putin not only invaded Ukraine, which everyone knew was coming, but he invaded all of Ukraine in a very brutal way. Nobody expected it to be quite as thorough and brutal. And it became very clear when he made that move that his goal is not just Ukraine. He doesn't stop there. His goal is to break the back of NATO, to keep going after Ukraine, to another country,
right,
and to eventually into NATO members. But the other thing that nobody expected was Ukrainian people. I mean, everyone assumed that, like previous Ukrainian governments, that they would cut and run, that the army would throw down its military, that the president would get on a plane with suitcases stuffed with cash,
right,
and the Russians and Vladimir Putin would be controlling Russia within 3 days of the invasion. Just the opposite has happened. I mean, the Ukrainian people, the military, and then the average citizen, they have doctors and lawyers and housewives and grannies who are picking up guns and willing to fight street by street to defend their country. And I think those two things happening has changed the calculation of the Europeans. They all of a sudden see, if Ukraine falls,
right,
gee, we might hand Russia, then goes after NATO. We've got Russian missiles at our border. We better do something different. Yes, and just 2 days ago, the Germans announced that they are going to send lethal weapons to Ukraine.
Right.
That they are going to increase very tough, strict sanctions on Russian banks. That the Germans, led by the German Green Party, is going to reassess their energy position, that they do not want to depend on Russia as they have been. And so they want to now reconsider American energy contribution to the mix, nuclear energy, even bringing back coal-fired plants. They're scared. And I do think that, again, this was a moment for America to step up and lead now that there's that change of attitude.
Right.
But I think President Biden really failed to do it.
I got to tell you, Zelensky has been such a rock star during, and such a leader, such an inspirational leader during this very difficult time. I know they're moving him bunker to bunker to try to keep him safe, but he's number one on the Russians' kill list. Will he be able to survive? And if something were to happen to him, doesn't that just change the dynamics, considering that it would be taking the life of a leader of a sovereign nation?
Putin's getting very close to the war crimes territory with what he's doing.
Right.
And he announced to people in Ukraine, leave or get killed.
Yes, that's right.
And so get out. Well, that's a war crime. The Geneva Convention says that if you deliberately target civilians, that's a war crime. And it sounds like that's what Putin's saying. I'm deliberately targeting the civilian population of Kiev. And again, so I think Vladimir Putin is in a very strange space. And frankly, I think we're in completely uncharted territory.
Right. And
Putin threatening nuclear weapons, cyber attacks,
that's right,
and killing civilian populations. Yeah. Well, he's become a pariah overnight. A week ago, he was the world's global strongman, fully but strongman. Now he's just a pariah. And even the Chinese have disavowed him.
Well, and you've, on top of that, he's talked to, there has been a reporting on the fact that his military has used vacuum bombs, that they use cluster bombs. These are banned under the Geneva Convention as well. So it just sounds, and what I keep hearing, and I think we were having this conversation as well, is that that if he feels cornered, he can get even more aggressive because he doesn't want to feel that he's going to lose this battle. Your thoughts?
He's getting very close to his fighting for his own survival, and this is why, because the oligarchs around him, the guys with all the money. He made a deal with those oligarchs decades ago where he said, keep the money, stay out of politics.
Exactly.
If you don't get in politics, I'm not going to take your money away. And similarly, the generals who have always supported him, he said, follow me, support me, I'll give you all the money you want for your military buildup.
Right.
But what you've seen in the last day is that as those oligarchs, the billionaires, are coming out and saying, wait a minute, I'm not really sure I'm supporting Putin. And then there are indications coming that the Russian military may be having second thoughts. Now, the Russian military we always thought it was going to be so good. It turned out to be completely incompetent. If Vladimir Putin has to fight, street by street by street for another couple of days, and certainly another week or so, it's going to be a very bad situation for Putin because he either looks incompetent or he looks like a nasty, mean pariah bully going after civilians and breaking the Geneva Convention. I'm not sure that the senior leadership of Russia wants to be associated with that.
So let me ask you, because President Biden mentioned the fact that Putin has been isolated, but yet, Putin also has his own buddies, whether it be China, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Iran. I mean, he has his own group of bullies himself that are supporting him, or at least trying to stay neutral. How do you really believe that Putin is isolated right now, and in terms of from the international standpoint?
Yeah, I think what happened the last day or so, where the Chinese government issued a statement saying we regret the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Right. It's really significant. Because Putin and Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, they're supposed to be joined at the hip. Yeah. And if all of a sudden Putin's best pal is calling him out for that, I think you'll see that a lot of other countries looking to China's lead are going to say, well, if China's calling him out as a pariah, we'll call him out as well. The other thing that's worth pointing out from a sort of tactical military perspective, the Russian military went in there assuming they'd have control of the country within 3 days, one way or the other. They didn't bring the supplies they need. They didn't bring the replacement parts. They didn't bring the foodstuffs. They didn't bring the gasoline for a protracted fight. And so I think that as bad as the Russian militaries look, they're going to look even worse in the next couple of days, and particularly as all of these European countries and the private community, particularly the tech world, amazingly, has come to the aid of Ukraine. They're raising money for Ukraine. They're sending, people are sending military equipment to Ukraine. Individuals are sending foodstuffs and clothing and flak jackets to Ukraine. So if this becomes protracted, and it looks like it's a guerrilla war, and the mighty Russian military is getting bogged down in Ukraine, I think Vladimir Putin is going to have real issues at home.
But KT, what if Putin is able to surround Kyiv and make it very difficult for the supplies to get to the Ukrainian military?
That's true, but they are indeed somehow getting through, and I don't want to say anything further.
Nope, don't say anything further, but I do want to ask you this one question. We saw the spokesperson for the Pentagon, John Kirby, come out today basically saying that they would delay the intercontinental ballistic missile testing to hope to de-escalate Russia nuclear tensions. Is there a sign there that maybe there's major concern that this could escalate quickly?
Yes. So a couple of things happen. During a crisis like this, you don't want anybody to misinterpret or misunderstand and escalate, really sort of a reflexive reaction. We're worried. The whole world is worried now that Putin we poked the bear. Yeah. And he's now in such a place that he doesn't want to go down with the ship, so to speak. He doesn't want to be associated with a failure. So even announcing, well, I'm putting my nuclear forces on alert, that's meant to be a diversionary tactic, right? That's made for everybody not to pay attention to the mess that he's got in Ukraine and to worry about something else. So the worry is not only nuclear, but cyber, particularly cyber. I've heard from friends of mine in the intelligence community and the cyber world community that the concern is that Putin is sort of looking for any excuse to say, aha, the American government is behind all this, the American government is attacking me here, there, or elsewhere, and then to escalate. We're in uncharted territory with a man who has, up till now, been extremely shrewd and calculating and frankly, and sadly, successful in everything he's done. This is the first time I've seen Vladimir Putin really make a major mistake, and this is a doozy.
Now,
he's gone a week to now a pariah on the world stage.
Two more questions. One, I've heard this from not only former Ambassador Rick Grenell, but Senator Marco Rubio, where they're talking about that the intelligence community, they feel that there's been a shift in behavior with Putin. I mean, you've been tracking Putin for decades. Have you seen this shift of behavior? Is it this madman mentality that's really dominating his decision-making process right now?
He looks and acts differently. And I was really surprised that Putin took such a big risk in going for the full invasion of Ukraine. If he had lopped off a couple of provinces and maybe organized a coup in Kiev, he probably could have gotten away with it.
Right.
But he's played a very, very risky high hand of poker. And the other thing is that Putin in the last couple of years, he has isolated himself since COVID started, whether he's concerned about COVID or whether he's just become paranoid in his old age. He has isolated himself, not at the Kremlin, but at his sort of country retreat, if you will. And that's been built up as he's not seen anybody personally. People have to go through several layers and days of waiting before they even have an opportunity to see him. And he's always been a guy who hasn't trusted the internet, amazingly. He doesn't do email, doesn't do the internet.
Right.
And so when you think about Vladimir Putin alone, isolated because of COVID, not in the middle of downtown Moscow, and then with no real, social media presence to be concerned with, I do kind of worry that he's pretty confused. He's not really knowledgeable or cognizant of where the world is. He's in a different place.
So let me ask you, going back to the State of the Union, there was a moment where we saw President Biden basically talk about our military and then doesn't even refer to the 13 servicemen and women that were killed in Afghanistan. You saw Congresswoman, I believe Lauren Boebert, speak out. She got a lot of criticism about it, which I actually think it was the right thing to do for her to speak out on behalf of the 13 men and women. I do want to play this clip from Jen Psaki, the press secretary, and I want to get your reaction. Take a listen.
So look, a speech like the State of the Union, it's hugely important. It doesn't have the time to touch on everything that is a priority.
So it was very noticeable, KT, that he did not mention Afghanistan in any way. What are your thoughts?
Well, he also didn't manage to mention China.
Yes.
Our major strategic threat. I thought that was quite telling. And the focus on Ukraine, where he thinks it's a success story for Biden diplomacy, no one else does. But the fact that as a president of the United States, I guess I would have thought he was a bigger man than that. But to take the sacrifice of the American military and the death of those brave Americans at the Kabul airport, and just for political reasons not even want to bring it up, I just thought that was really shabby of him.
Yeah.
He's my president, and I just wish he were a bigger man.
Yeah, I thought it was really noticeable that he did not mention Afghanistan, although he defends his decision to quickly evacuate without having a plan of action. And to your point, China wasn't even mentioned, really barely mentioned. I think maybe might have mentioned it once. It just felt like such a patchwork of a speech where it wasn't you could tell that they had different drafts, and I don't think it came together nicely. But KT, can stay with me one more segment. I just want to there's a couple more topics I want to cover with you. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Schlapp with CPAC, and it's my privilege to tell you that we've got a very important project that we've just announced, the First Amendment Fund. It's a brand new fund that we've created through our criminal justice reform efforts to raise money to take care of you, Americans who are being canceled and desecrated out there around the country. We know it just happened in Virginia, where parents were called domestic terrorists by the Biden administration, where people who just want to express their political views are canceled left and right. Now we have this terrible specter of a vaccine mandate where you can lose your job or be prevented from going to a restaurant or go to school according to your vaccination status. These are all the things that are happening in this country that are making people realize that America is in a fight to defend the principles that have made her great. If you want to be involved in this important effort, please go to conservative.org, click the link for the First Amendment Fund. Please donate to this C3 to help these victims across the country, including those who are just involved in politics, to make sure they have the legal representation they need to be able to live their great American life.
Okay, well, Matt Schlepp is down in Florida finishing up some work. I got KT McFarland as my co-host, giving me all this great news analysis. So KT, I love having you on with us here at CPAC Now. I want to play this clip. I thought it was really interesting during the State of the Union that he brought up the border. Let's take a listen.
If we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system.
Okay, at a moment there, I thought we were listening to a President Trump speech, because I don't think the word secure the border has ever come out of Joe Biden's mouth. What do you, I mean, don't you think it was a little strange, or do you think he's just reacting to the poll numbers?
Well, he's reacting to the poll numbers. I mean, I took an initial, double take.
Yes.
Wait, is he talking about securing the
Yes.
Ukrainian border or
Right.
the American border? The keeping the border open, I used to think that, they didn't understand, they were confused. And a while ago, I realized that keeping the American southern border open is very deliberate.
Right.
They think they're going to get a lot of new people to come into the United States who are going to love the Democrats because the Democrats let them into the United States. They're going to grant them citizenship, grant them amnesty, grant them voting rights, and they're going to have a big permanent block of voters in a lot of red states. The thing is, the one thing about the President Biden is he usually does kind of goof it up, certainly in foreign policy, and I would put this in the same category. He's going to let in a lot of Hispanics. And what have we seen? Because you told us, Mercedes.
Oh, yes.
What have we seen about the Hispanic vote?
Now-
They're increasingly voting Republican.
Yes,
Or
that's right.
Ronald Reagan once said to a lot of Hispanic voters,
Yeah.
you guys are all Republicans.
Yes.
You just don't know it yet.
Yes.
So I think at the end of the day, they're going to outsmart themselves. So what they're doing is letting in a lot of new Republican voters into the United States.
So the other one that was one of these unbelievable moments was when he talked about that he was going to fund the police. Let's take a listen.
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police.
Again, KT, I was kind of in shock. I was like, wait a second, what speech are we listening to? This goes completely against what a lot of members of his own party believe. I mean, how many times have we seen AOC or Congresswoman Tlaib come out and say, defund the police and defund it now? And actually, how can Biden support BLM if the core of their movement is to defund the police?
He's not. I mean, Mercedes, he's just saying things. He's not. His words have never matched his deeds.
Yeah.
He's just saying things that he thinks are popular and going to get him votes, going to get him popularity, going to keep his poll numbers up. But he's not doing anything. Again, it's like foreign policy. It's the same thing. He says, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm for this, I'm for that. And if you look at the record, there's nothing there. The callousness of it, though, is that he assumes nobody's ever going to look at the record, right? The media is never going to cover him. They're going to cover up for him every single time. And to me, that's a real indication that all those people we saw at CPAC, all those grassroots activists, thank goodness you're doing your job, because I hope Joe Biden is bye-bye.
Yeah, one-term
after the next election.
One-term president, and we just got to see what happens next. I mean, I think we saw just Kamala Harris give like a third-grade answer about Ukraine and Russia. It was so embarrassing. I don't know if you saw that clip.
Yes.
That was I couldn't believe it. I was like, my high schooler can give a better answer than that.
Yeah, I mean, the tragedy is when the world looks at that.
Right.
And even if the American media won't look at it, the world looks at that and says, wait a minute, we've got Biden, who's clearly in a cognitive decline. And his poll numbers, he's probably one of the most unpopular American presidents in our history. And they perceive weakness, and a weak president to start with, but weakness in the sense that the American people aren't behind him. And then you look at the backup plan, which is Vice President Harris, and that's even more discouraging. So I think that, again, you know, it's gone back to Roman times. If you want peace, prepare for war. If you appear weak, countries will exploit you and take advantage of you and have their will and way with you. And that's the great tragedy, I think, of the United States right now. A year ago, Vladimir Putin would have never picked this fight, as Donald Trump said. But now, today, he thinks it's his time. The same way with the Chinese president, the same way with Iran, the same way with North Korea. They're looking at the United States weak, disorganized, and unpopular president, and they say, A, democracy doesn't seem to be functioning, and B, I'm going to take full advantage of it.
Right. Well, great analysis. I do want to ask one final question, KT. What grade do you give Joe Biden in his address last night, and what could he have done better?
No, I would say he was just absent. You know, there's that
Absent.
You know that expression?
Great answer.
Old wine in new bottles. When somebody comes out and says, "I've got this great new plan," and you look at it and you say, old wine, new bottles. I look at Joe Biden and I say, old wine, old bottles, old guy drinking it.
Oh, goodness. And who was your favorite speaker at CPAC?
Ooh, gosh, that's a really hard one. I must say I was very, very impressed with Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yeah.
The Democrat, the very much of an independent thinker who spoke at the Reagan dinner. And the reason I was so impressed was, and I actually went up and talked to her before she spoke. And I said, you know, I'm a conservative Republican. And she said, I'm in a lot of ways a liberal Democrat. And I said, but you know, the two of us see eye to eye on an awful lot of things. Maybe there's a place here that we can cooperate. Because what all Americans want us to do is figure out a way to work together.
I know.
So I found her speech was a very impressive speech. She's a young woman. And I also thought, hey, maybe there's some real opportunity here.
I agree. I think, you know, it's the Democrat platform versus a Republican platform. Let's just call it the America platform, that we know that we can all come together and find common ground. KT McFarland, it is always an honor to have you on our show. Thank you for your insight. And thank you all so much for those who attended CPAC Florida. I loved meeting so many of you. You are such an inspiration to us. And you can still watch a lot of the programming. If you missed some of the shows, go to cpac.org and you can catch up to what you might have missed during our time at CPAC Florida. Thank you all and good night.